My speech is called Earth, Problems We're Facing Today and Will Soon. So I have this quote from Al Gore, who was one of the candidates for the presidency of 2004. And he knew a lot about global warming and the problems we're facing, so he said this at the National Sierra Club Convention on September 9, 2005. 2,000 scientists in 100 countries engaged in the most elaborate, well-organized scientific collaboration in the history of humankind have reduced long since a consensus that we will face a string of terrible catastrophes unless we act to prepare ourselves and deal with the underlying causes of global warming. So I was going to play a video, but we don't have time for it, so I'll just say that in the video, it talks about what happened this year, like how we had a lot of drought, and there were a lot of fires, and a lot of lives were lost, and there was Hurricane Irene. And so I was just going to explain the statistics of what we're dealing with. So when I was in 9th grade at this private school that I used to go to last year called New Hope Academy, I joined an after-school program called ACE. It was created by the high school science teacher who said that it stood for Alliance for Climate Education. I learned so much more about the Earth than just global warming in that class. Stemming from the topic of Earth in its entirety, I learned about the possible extinction of all the coral in the oceans by 2050 because of too much acidity, the loss of animals that are keys to many ecosystem food chains, the disastrous consequences of too much CO2 in our atmosphere, the natural disasters caused by gradual shifts in the placement of our climate, the energy our Earth loses every day, and the copious amounts of biomass taking up space all over the world. I can't really read this because it's really faded, so if I take really long, I'm sorry. What I would like to first talk about is the coral population. Coral is not just an ecosystem. It is also our benefactor. Let me explain. Coral, which is made up of mostly mangroves, seagrasses, and mudflats, provide protection from erosion to coastlines and sand for beaches. If you know or maybe forgot, this was one of the reasons why Hurricane Katrina was so devastating. Because during Hurricane Katrina, before Hurricane Katrina actually, the coastlines had depleted. And since New Orleans is below sea level, it was an easy target to but if there were more coastlines, the hurricane would have actually started to weaken, because when it gets to land, it starts to weaken, but when it gets over water, it builds up and becomes stronger. So that was talked about a lot during the news after Hurricane Katrina. The coastlines had depleted to such an extent that we had basically no protection whatsoever from even simple floods. If all the coral in the oceans were to go extinct, oh, by the way, coral goes extinct when you touch it. I guess the skin is exposed, and so it starts to disappear, actually just starts to erode itself. It dies when you touch it. That's why, whenever there are tourists in Australia, when they're looking at the coral reefs there, they can't actually touch it. They have to stay on the boat and look at it, and they can take pictures, but if they touch it, if the boat even touches it, it just destroys the coral ecosystem. And if all the coral in the oceans were to go extinct, then about half of the fish in the ocean would go with it, because there's such a diverse population of fish in the ocean. But recent studies have shown that if we don't make a change in the way we treat coral reefs, they'll be gone by 2050. So we can't let them die, because if they're gone, then that means that we're going to lose a lot of land to the ocean, and we're going to start having floods everywhere across the world. Kind of like what's going to happen if the ice caps melt. The same goes for the endangered species in the wild. Large predators like tigers and lions are the key to certain ecosystems. Because you see, large primary consumers like zebras and wild boars become too prolific in ecosystems that without... It's the British pronunciation, not They become too prolific in ecosystems without any major predator to keep their population in check. So this can result in the loss of an important food source, like grass, because they eat it all up, and then all the other animals that have to eat it don't have the same food source. So basically, if there's one animal that is the key to that, like a lion, if a lion was gone, then all of the wildebeest, all of the zebras, all of the springbok, all of them, they eat up all the grass, and we have very unfertile ground. Stop laughing. Seriously. Poaching laws are being placed in reserves in African Asia, but it's not really catching on. I mean, who here saw Madagascar 2?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember when they used that toy to get Alex out of the reserve? That's not fiction. That happens every single week. So many lions are being sold to many capitalists who can benefit from it. This is the wrong speech paper.
What?
I just realized this because this doesn't go down to the last page. Mr. Sapp, can I get the paper? This is the unfinished one. This is the rough draft.
Can you wrap it up off the top?
Yeah, I think I can.
I think you can, so you're bright. Alright, go for it.
So also, there's another problem. There's the CO2 in our atmosphere is way too high. When I was at Nova Academy and I was at ACE, there was this video about Al Gore. It was like a documentary, and he was talking to these students at this university, and he put up the statistics like of just like it looked like at the hospitals when it shows the heartbeat goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, but then it rose 2 times more than it usually does, and that was the CO2 levels. So many politicians say that it's normal for levels to vary, but when it's 2 times the level, I think that means we might actually not have that much stuff to eat, and just because you're not going to be alive when it's there, I think your grandchildren want to actually live in a good Earth. So ozone, which protects the Earth from UV radiation, depletes when CO2 is when it comes into contact with CO2. Like the polar ice caps, especially Antarctica, during the summer, it melts and it releases this chemical that when it gets in the atmosphere, it depletes the ozone just enough so that there can be enough sunlight. But because of global warming, the ice caps have melted too much, and this chemical, when it comes in contact with the ozone, it actually splits the atom. And the atom itself that destroys the ozone splits too. So it can destroy up to 4,000 atoms of ozone with just one atom. And about 400 of these atoms are being released into the ozone layer. What do I say? What was I going to say after this?
You know it's hard to fall, right?
Oh, right. I was going to talk about global warming. So, as you know, global warming is just caused when we burn fossil fuels and it's releasing the atmosphere. It's really as simple as that. Just because we burn fossil fuels, so we can have power, we can have electricity. That's really the primary reason that we have all this pollution. But there's also biomass, which we also burn. Now, biomass is just like the trash that's littered all over the world because we can't find a place to get rid of it. And so, again, the capitalists say, why don't we just burn it? But if you burn it, it releases more bad chemicals into the atmosphere, and again, more global warming. Like, right now, this is how bad I find the news to be. They are not neutral. In France, right now, they have actually said that they're going to stop fracking, which means to heat the rock so they can get oil, and they're going to basically start using oil and make eco-friendly cars. But the news doesn't want to put that because then politicians will say you can't put that. And also, in Greenland, does anyone know what's happening in Greenland right now?
No.
All the ice is melting. If you've seen the polar bears, they always put it on there and they show the polar bears walking around where there's nowhere to stand. They have to keep swimming through the ice. I watched this movie called, I don't know if you heard of Earth. It was in 2006 or something. Yeah. Yeah. And it followed the story of this polar bear family.